Hello guys, welcome back to Hollywood Recapped. Today, I am going to recap a 2000 drama romance movie named Malena. At the beginning of the film, we see a woman named Malena, who is quite attractive. Malena is from a little town, and she is the most attractive woman in town. Everyone here in town loves having her, whereas every woman in town was envious of her and wished to be like her. Every man in town desired Malena to be his. Now we see Renato, a teenage boy, who lives in the town, who was far younger than Malena. Renato buys a new bicycle and goes to demonstrate it to his friends. Then his friends inform him that Malena is going to cross through here, and all of these boys wish to see her, which is why they sit at one place. Malena begins to pass through here around that time, and these lads keep an eye on her. Renato couldn't take his gaze away from her when he saw her. When Malena walks by, the boys begin to follow her again. These guys will not stop following Malena till she enters the city. Malena's father is a teacher, but they can't hear him. In his school, he was teaching students. These students are sitting in their class and talking about Malena in various ways. These students are causing problems for Malena's father also. Renato then goes to Malena's residence and begins staring at her. Malena is sobbing in her bedroom. We learn here that Malena's husband worked for the military during the war, and he hasn't returned as of yet. On the contrary side, we witness Renato and his friend discussing Malena. Renato's friend informs him that Malena once demanded him a cigarette. So the majority of the town used to think Malena was a bad lady. Malena was the subject of numerous rumors throughout society. Renato then seemed to have developed a strong liking for Malena. Renato has heard from several people that Malena is a bad lad who loves to talk to anyone. Renato gradually begins to fantasize about Malena, and he now dreamed about Malena becoming intimate with her. Renato now wished to live like an adult, yet he was actually a teenager. Renato takes his father's trousers cut and wears them himself, since he dislikes wearing shorts. His father is furious with him over this, and afterwards he beats him. Renato, on the other hand, continues to deteriorate, and now he is always pursuing Malena. He used to gaze at Malena through the hole he'd created. Malena, on the other hand, knows nothing about this. Someone is keeping an eye on her. Malena is shocked to learn that her husband has been killed during the war. Malena is disturbed and begins crying after learning about this. We learn here that Malena loved her husband. Her wait ended when she heard that her hubby had been killed in the war. She stops looking for him and begins to examine it. What will she be doing in this home before moving to her father's house? Renato is employed somewhere, and one day when he overhears people discussing Malena in many incorrect way, he thinks he knows the truth regarding Malena. And now he has to clarify to every person that Malena is certainly not a bad woman, who simply loves her husband. Renato has begun to observe Malena in his father's home, as well. And he begins to fantasize that Malena has gotten him, and he encourages Malena not to be sad since he is always with her. And he expresses his feelings to Malena. Renato then goes to church. As we can say, he prays to the Lord to take proper care of Malena, and for this he will light candles in the church every day. On the contrary hand, we see Malena's father that he receives an unidentified letter. According to the narrative, Malena's romance is going on with several people in town, and her daughter is a whore. Her father becomes enraged after reading this and now turns down Malena as his daughter. He requests that she leave his residence. Malena had become completely alone once more. When Renato finds out that Malena has moved to live alone again, then he comes to her home and begins peeping through the same hole. And when he visits Malena's house one night, he notices a policeman in her home. It appeared as if the two were engaged in a relationship. Renato feels terrible seeing this since he believes he had regarded her to be a good woman and was planning to tell everyone else that Malena is a good woman. He doesn't accept it at all, which is when the policeman comes out of the house, and Renato attempts to hide from him. When the policeman appears, he sees a doctor. That doctor informs the policeman that Malena is intending to marry him. So, what exactly was he up to within the house? After Malena, there is a confrontation between the two. The police are then called. Following this incident, word spreads throughout the town that Malena is having a relationship with a married man. She may also be imprisoned for this. Malena is now quite offended and consults with a lawyer. She requests assistance from the lawyer in court. Malena's lawyer won the lawsuit, and everyone learns that the doctor lied. After winning this trial, the same lawyer attempts to compel Malena into having physical intimacy with him. Malena has a lot of power over her, yet she can't do much of anything. Renato is observing everything that is going on. And when he sees this, he becomes really upset. In the meantime, we see that the town is attacked by enemies, and Malena's father is killed. Malena is deeply saddened when she discovers of her father's passing, because she had no one to look after her. Whatever the pension Malena was receiving as a result of her husband's death was also terminated since it was confirmed that her husband had died. Malena was poised to run out of cash, and she was thinking a lot regarding work. However, she didn't really know anything. That is exactly what she should do. She eventually picks up a scissor and begins trimming her hair. She believes that the world views of her as a whore, so she has turned into what the world says of her. Renato feels terrible when he sees all of this. This irritates him immensely. Renato has even stopped eating amid Malena's sorrow. When his father learns about this, then his father catches up. Renato's father takes him to a brothel, so that he can fulfill his desire. Malena, while on the other hand, has evolved into a bad woman. The majority of the men in town have rushed to her. As a result, the wives of those men were extremely irritated. And then they come to Malena, knock her up, and force her out from town. Following this, we see Malena's husband return from the war. He was not martyred whereas he was alive. Someone had circulated false information about Malena's husband's death. He returns to his house, but he notices Malena does not appear to be found. Some other people resided in his house, and he asked everyone about Malena. And everyone claims that his wife has turned into a whore and no longer lives here. When he talks his friends about all of this, they keep making fun of him, and refuse to help him. These people mock him, thrash him, and throw him in there. Renato feels sorry for the husband once he sees all of this. He considers this after that only he knows the whole truth about Malena. And he's now going to tell everyone the reality about Malena, that she is a good woman. Renato then sends a letter to Malena's husband, and informs him. Malena is not a whore, but the residents of the city have branded her one. These people in society spoke so nasty stuff about Malena, and paying attention to these things used to make Malena very frustrated. Renato includes all of this information in his letter. He writes to Malena's husband about what occurred to her, and how she was expelled from the town. When Malena's husband reads this letter, he becomes enraged. He then tries to look for and bring back Malena. Following this, we see him walk all the way to the same town with his wife. Following this, everyone in this community begins to gravitate toward both of them. But now that her husband is with her, everyone respects to her. Malena is being respected by the entire town. Everyone is delighted to see these two reunited. Renato meets Malena in the final scene of the film, when some belongings fall from Malena's bag. Then Renato takes it and hands it to Malena and he assists her. He wishes Malena a bright future, and then the two of them take separate paths. And the movie ends here. Let me know what you all think in the comments section below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss the next recap.